Right, I believe we are live now. Okay, so I'm just going to check that it's also live online as well.
Mm-hmm. And you're aiming to make it 45 minutes?
About.
Mm-hmm.
If he overruns briefly, I don't think it's the end of the world, to be honest. Yeah, all good to go. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. I just like to welcome our audience from wherever you're watching us, or if you're watching this on replay, we would like to say thank you for watching on replay and thank you for joining us. So, my name is Tutu Popoola, and I'm the lead consultant and founder of Sleek HR Limited. And I have here with me today my colleague Andy Hix, and together we will be co-facilitating this session. I'll let Andy introduce himself.
Thanks, Tutu. Good to be here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Andy Hix, and for the last 12 years, I have been a mindfulness trainer and coach. So running workshops and doing coaching and courses to help people with things like stress, anxiety, anger, and self-criticism. And for the last 5 years, I have run my own men's group to explore my own masculinity, what it means to be a man, and practice opening up with other men. And I also run a group coaching program called Rewiring Masculinity. And it's also an online self-study program where we delve into how masculine stereotypes affect our mental health, our relationships, and the world around us.
Okay, thanks very much for the introduction, Andy. So just to give a bit of an overview as to how we got to this point. So Sleek HR, we do a lot of work around workplace inclusion and workplace, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there is also within that a lot of talk about well-being at work. But in the inclusion space, something that we've observed is that when we're talking about well-being, when we're talking about inclusion, men's health sometimes is rarely discussed. So, and we'll get into that. I'm sure Andy would, have a lot to say around that. So we thought this is something that we want to bring, to highlight, especially in the month of Movember. Which highlights, men's health, mental well-being, and all of that. So we thought this was a brilliant opportunity to do so. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Andy, now to tell us a little bit more about, around this topic and what we can do within the workplace.
Thanks, Tutu. Could you bring up my slides? I've got a few slides that I want to share with everyone.
Sure.
So, men's mental health at work, spotting the signs and simple tools for managers. What we're going to cover is why, as Tutu mentioned, we often don't talk very much about men's mental health. It often gets overlooked. How you can recognize the warning signs that an employee, maybe a friend, is struggling. Simple ways that as a manager, you can check in on your colleagues, and some practices that introduce ways that you can easily support men's mental health in your culture and make it safe for everyone to talk. And we're going to have some space at the end, which is just open to for Q&A. Welcome.
Can I just interrupt you quickly? I just want to ask our audience a question. Thank you for those of you that are dropping your comments in the chat, and thank you for joining us. So if you can comment wherever you're watching, please, if you can add your answers here. When you hear the phrase men's mental health, what comes to mind first? Can you pop in a word or an emoji in the chat to let us know what comes to your mind just before Andy will take us through the topic? What is it that comes to mind when you hear men's mental health? What emoji can you use to describe this, or what word comes to your mind? I'll let you carry on, Andy, and then I'll come back to the comments later.
Okay, great. Yeah, hopefully people can think about it while I'm speaking.
Yes. Have a think.
So this is one model for why it can be difficult for us to focus on men's mental health. Psychologists have actually found we tend to have less empathy for men than women. That when a man and a woman have committed the same crime, statistically, the man gets longer sentences. When a man has committed the same, has had the same misfortune, like they've lost their job, we tend to have more sympathy, feel more care and compassion for the woman, for the man. And that's even despite the fact that unemployment affects men statistically more severely than it affects women. And this model can help us understand a little bit why that might be. But psychologists have found that we tend to view the world around us and the people in the world around us in one of three ways: either a persecutor, a rescuer, or a victim.
Can I check with you that data that you shared? Is this a US data or global data or UK? That is a really interesting one.
This was a psychologist who's based in the States, but she was giving a talk at the LSE about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can share the links afterwards, because I found it really, really fascinating.
It is.
And I think it helps to explain a little bit about why men's mental health can be overlooked. And when we see someone in the role of a persecutor, like, for example, someone who's in prison for murder, we think they're a persecutor. We tend to feel less empathy for them. And we tend to associate generally men as persecutors and women as victims in our society. So we have less compassion for men in general. This is what psychology studies have found. And we think that they deserve harsher punishments. And when we see someone as a persecutor, we tend to have less compassion for them. And if you go on to the next slide, I want to share some statistics about why it's really important that we do have compassion for men, because even though there are still many ways that they are thriving, many world leaders, the majority of world leaders and the majority of CEOs in the FTSE 500 are still men. Mm-hmm. At the other end of the spectrum, 78% of boys or children who are excluded from school are male. Only 42% of graduates are male. 58% are female. And women overtook men as graduates in the early 80s. Ever since then, there's been more female graduates. Men have 66% higher cancer deaths. 60% of COVID deaths globally were men. 67% of heart disease deaths are men. 72% of alcoholics. 3/4 of suicides. The vast majority of rough sleepers. We know that most violent crime is perpetrated by men, but they're also 70% of the victims of murder. And 96% of prisoners, people in prison, are men.
This data is quite astounding, to say the least. I'm just going to go back briefly to our audience. We asked them a question earlier, and we said, when you think about men's mental health, which word or emoji comes to mind? And there has been a few responses. Thanks everyone who's taking the time to respond. Dolapo said that what comes to mind is men are always fine. So that's our response to that. Thanks very much, Dolapo. Jonathan Lee said, open to listening to new idea. Thanks very much, Jonathan. We hope you will be able to share some new insights with you today. Malcolm's response to that is Malcolm's response to that is silent struggling. Oh, that's Malcolm said, that's Malcolm's response. And then we had Peter, whose response to that is a sad emoji. And he said depressed, sad. So that's what comes to the mind of our current audience when you mention men's mental health. Thanks very much, everyone. I'll let you carry on.
Thank you.
Andy.
Yeah. And I think the always fine comment is really interesting, because it's often what we say as men, is what I've said for most of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm fine. But what's underneath the fine is often what Malcolm's saying, is the silent struggle. We don't necessarily want to say what's really going on. And this quote that really resonates with me is, most men live lives of quiet desperation.
Someone said not expressive. I think that's just exactly what you've just said. Everyone Lua said not expressive.
Exactly. So I guess I'm just curious as well, what feelings come up in response to these statistics when you take in all of these different ways that men are not doing so well in society? What feeling does it evoke? I'm curious for you two too, as well as the people who are on the chat.
I think for me, when we look at those statistics, I feel sad about it. Really, I think there's obviously some bias at play there, especially when you talk about the criminal justice system and we look at those stats there. So I think for me, it's not just one feeling. I think I feel sad, but then I also follow that immediately with curiosity. Why? What's going on? Why do we have this data? So it's both curiosity, sadness to start with, because obviously as humans, that's not the figures that we want to see. But then also immediately after that, my curious mind takes over and says, why is this going on? Why is this happening?
I think that's great, Tutu, because that sadness to me, it communicates care, that you really care for these men in the world that are really not doing well. And that's what we need. We need to connect more with our care if we're going to be motivated to do something about it. And the curiosity, like we all need to try and understand what is going on better. And I think that's one of the point of this session, is we haven't collectively had enough curiosity about what is going on for men. And for a lot of us, it's like, whoa, I didn't realize it was that bad, because there's not enough spotlight being shone on these issues.
Jonathan Lee said, no surprise on the starts. So he's not surprised about this at all. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. Some of us are more in touch with the reality of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So I want to share a little bit about masculine stereotypes now, and how they're not the whole reason that men are struggling, but they play into it. Right. And when we talk about masculine stereotypes, we all have a sort of vague idea what we mean, but I found this model from a sociologist called Robert Brannon really clarifying. And what he did was he studied American culture, and he came up with a scale for measuring how masculine men were in the 1970s. And there's 4 key components to what he defined as masculinity in the 1970s. Okay. So the first one is no sissy stuff. So to be a manly man, don't be vulnerable, open, don't cry, don't show emotion, don't show affection towards men, because all of these things make you seem sissy, weak, feminine, or gay. A lot of what was used as an insult when I was at school was, you're gay. It was like the worst thing that people could throw at you. So you constantly lived in fear of showing any of these kind of characteristics where people could launch that at you. The second thing is the big wheel. So to be a manly man, you need to be high status, successful, big, rich, strong, have an attractive girlfriend, sleep with lots of women who are attractive, and also funny. Being funny can give you status. The sturdy oak, stable, self-reliant, confident, unflappable, don't need emotional support from anyone. The Lone Ranger kind of character. And finally, give them hell. Being willing to resort to aggression or violence if necessary. So my question for you here is, how do you see these kind of behaviors showing up in a workplace? Do you see them? And if so, what does it look like when you see these kind of masculine stereotypes?
Can we go back on the slides again? So I would definitely say I relate to the first one around stigmatizing openness and vulnerability. I find that not all, and I'm not, I'm just making a general statement here. There is within the workplace and within by virtue of my position and what I do, there is not a lot of openness, generally speaking, and vulnerability shown by men, especially when you're thinking about having difficult conversations at work. And I feel like sometimes we want to wrap that up in, we're just logical. And I always find that to be very interesting when people say that, not in a good way.
Yeah.
They say, oh, men are more logical. I'm like, well, we're all human to start with. So this whole idea of we're just logical, I feel like it falls on this number one umbrella of concealing emotion. If you're going through a redundancy, for example, I find that men are less likely to want to access the outplacement support that comes with trying to help them find new roles, or talking about how are you feeling, how are you going to cope with the financial impact that's coming and all of that. I feel like we sometimes have to do a little bit more work to support men when it comes to accessing outplacement support. So for me, that would be my response in terms of how it shows up in the workplace. A lot of times they're concealing emotions and thinking, oh, that's fine, I'll go and get another job. I'm like, really? In the meantime, do you want to think about employee assistance program? Do you want to speak to a counselor? All of that stuff, I think is, in my experience anyway, quite underutilized at work by men.
It's interesting you say that, Tutu, because it's one of the things that came up in that psychology study about how men and women are treated differently, that actually it does impact men psychologically more when they lose their job. That it may be because we attach it more to our sense of identity of being a provider, maybe because we have less of a support network than a lot of women do. So it's really interesting that whilst we suffer more than women, we access the support in those moments less than women. It should be the other way around.
And that's why I'm going to call you out on my next comment. I'm going to call you out a little bit because I'm not going to let you get off lightly on that. So we've said what we've said, and the reality is what it is. But at the same time, is part of this not self-inflicted? Because if you think about it, and I know that you're not going to like this very much, but we're here to have open, honest conversations, right? Is some of this not self-inflicted? So I appreciate in the case where there's certain stereotypes and people, men are seen a certain way, and this is how society views us all and all of that stuff. That's not changing. We've seen that. Or hopefully changes, but we've seen that. But in situations where the support is there and men are not accessing it, can we really say is how society is treating men? Or is this a situation where they just think they can do it all on their own? This is my call out to you now.
So are you kind of saying that, well, if the support is there and they're not taking it, it's not anyone else's fault, it's their responsibility? Because
it's two tiers. There's personal responsibility, and then there is societal responsibility as well. So institutional responsibility, not society. Let's say institutional. Organizations should look after everyone that they employ, right? And we should care about what people do at work, how people are, and all of that stuff. So that's the institutional aspect of it. But in cases where people are then not accessing the support that's available, even when they've been made aware of it, where does that? What would you say your comment is on that?
Well, I think
what are your views on that?
I think this is a really important point, because on the one hand, yes, men have responsibility for themselves. We all have responsibility for ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to do what we need to thrive in the world. And at the same time, what this slide is showing is that we've been taught from a very young age that if we ask for help, that if we admit that we need support, that we're struggling, we're overwhelmed, we're stressed, we will be shamed.
So that's how we've been socialized.
That's how we've been socialized. And I saw this really powerful interview with Susie Bennett, who has studied specifically men's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave this example of an older gentleman who had attempted suicide and hadn't succeeded. And he said to this researcher, I preferred to end my life than tell my wife I was struggling.
Mm.
And for me, that really hits deep, because it's like, that's how much men fear saying, yes, please, I want some support. So on the one hand, yes, it's my responsibility if I need help to ask for it. And on the other hand, we need to be aware of the pressure, the terror that a lot of men feel not to take it. The fear of how their wife will see them, their friends will see them, their colleagues will see them, their ex-colleagues. I've also coached men in corporate spaces, construction company. He was terrified of any of his colleagues knowing he'd had coaching, because they're going to think I'm weak. They're going to think I'm struggling. It needs to be a complete secret that I've had coaching. That is what men are living with when they don't take this kind of support. How is that for you to hear, Tutu? Well,
still, what's the right word? I'm trying to choose my words carefully. That's still sad for me to hear, because a lot of the time, I can speak from the perspective of institutions and organizations. A lot of the time, a lot of investment is made into this support, and it's quite unnerving. Like I say, it's sad to hear that people still in 2025 don't feel like they can access them, because they're literally there. They're there. And they're there to support others. But also, I'm not downplaying, how we've been socialized and, historical patterns. And that also plays its own part. And I guess that then, calls for us to have a greater deal of awareness of these things, and think about how can we better position some of this support in a way that, and I know I might be jumping to the end now, but sorry, this is just my brain, working overtime, I guess. How can we better position some of this support in a way that people don't see it as something that they cannot take up, that both men and women will still want to take it up? But I think some of it is in the positioning of how some of this support is made available. How is it positioned? And that's something I think for us all to think about. If anyone has any comments or contributions to what we're saying, please continue to post in the chat, because I just feel like Andy and I can be here all day and just carry on.
I'm imagining people have a lot of responses to what we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, just because I want to share some ways that we can make it easier for men to access this kind of support. I want to say a little bit about how these stereotypes can also feed into burnout. This idea as a man that I need to be the provider, I can't admit that I need support, I'm struggling, that I'm overwhelmed. A competitiveness with other men, with other people in the office, leading to overworking. I need to be seen as tough. And on average, men have less emotional support than women. Men tend to open up less about their emotional difficulties than women do. So these sorts of stereotypes around you shouldn't show emotion and ask for help can really ratchet up the pressure on men and lead to burnout. Some signs that you can look for in a man that he's struggling but maybe not saying. You might see that he's working harder than ever, and maybe he's sending emails at midnight, but he's achieving less. He's not actually producing good quality work or that much work. And that's maybe because his brain is kind of shutting down from burnout. You might be just being very kind of flat and unemotional, or very snappy. He might withdraw. He might just say he's fine all the time and not really be very honest about what's really going on. And you might find out that he's stopped doing things he enjoys. He's not seeing his friends in the pub or going to play football or whatever it is, because he's just feeling so overwhelmed with life. So these are some things that we can look out for in the men in our workplaces to just prompt us to check in. are you actually okay? I'm a little bit worried.
Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing to be able to do that, that means that we're expecting managers to have a bit of an emotional investment in their team as well. Because for you to notice that someone's stopped doing something that he enjoys doing, that means you know what he enjoys doing to start with. Before you are able to spot that, okay, something is obviously shifted within that. And I always say something that the modern workplace is so different now, and the employer-employee relationship has changed, where this were not, I mean, even 20 years ago, I don't see that these were expectations that you would have of managers. You're just to come into work, get the work done, go home. But now I feel like there is another layer in terms of what they need to know, what they need to be aware of, what they need to look out for. But this is very useful and very good to know. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of flip side, I guess, of encouraging each other to be more open about how we really are. Is that maybe for a manager can feel like more pressure. Like before, 20 years ago, it was just like, are they performing, are they not? Now I'm supposed to be some kind of like, I don't know, social worker.
Therapist.
Yeah, and that's not why you go to work every day, to be a therapist. So I guess that's the sort of that's one side of it. But the other side is like, don't we all want to have strong relationships at work? Don't we want to feel like we care for each other, we know each other, not just as kind of robots of productivity, but we know, like, about each other's families and what you got up at the weekend and just how are you doing generally. So going on to like some solutions, some things that we can actually do to support men at work. So first and foremost, if you want to be supportive to anyone in your life, whether it's your colleagues, your children, people who are suffering on the other side of the world, put your own gas mask, put your own oxygen mask. Gas yourself to death first, and then see what you can do. Sorry, no. Put your own oxygen mask on first. What are you doing to take care of your own well-being? Are you taking breaks? Are you sleeping well? Are you exercising? That's the best thing you can do to help anyone, is to make sure that you're filled up. Your cup is filled up. So that's the first suggestion. Second one is micro connections. We were just talking about, how would you know if a man in your team isn't playing football anymore? Well, if you start a meeting with just a few minutes of, how are you doing? Really? Let's check in. How are you feeling? How's life? How was your evening? How was your weekend? Celebrating people's birthdays, appreciating each other, not just focusing on what went wrong or what still needs to be done. There's a beautiful... To your point of what
you said earlier, sorry to interrupt you, Andy, about the micro connection and asking people, how was your weekend? I think the only thing I'll add to that is, when you ask, then wait, pause, and then listen.
Yes.
Because sometimes I find some of these very performative, where people say, oh, how are you? Did you have a good weekend? And then they go on to talk about the spreadsheets. And it's like, okay, I haven't actually had the chance to respond to the question that you just asked me about my weekend. So when we talk about micro connections, asking yes, but then pause and wait for a response, and then try and remember what I told you as well. Yeah, but I'll let you carry on.
I think that's absolutely right, Tutu. You need to actually care when you ask. My friend told me this story of this quite, should we say, tough boss at his workplace. Yeah. She called up somebody else in the company and said, "Hi, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, actually, I'm feeling really stressed at the moment." And this manager is, "Right, that's not why I called."
Oh, wow.
You did not
okay. I mean, what can I say to that?
Pretty brutal.
It is.
So yeah, that's kind of like maybe it doesn't go without saying, but you actually have to care how they're doing and how their weekend was. And just another little example that I like of micro connections, they've done studies on talking to strangers, where they got someone on the metro in the States, and they also repeated it on the tube in the UK, and they encouraged them to just say hello and start a conversation with a stranger. They measured their well-being at the end of the day, And both the stranger and the person who started the conversation felt happier hours later from having this very brief little, hi, let's have a little chat, even though we don't know each other. So there can be very powerful moments where we feel less alone and more connected.
Okay.
So vulnerable leadership. If we want the people in our company to be able to admit that they're burning out, that they're struggling, overwhelmed, they've got some issues with their mental health, as leaders, people are looking up to us and seeing, do we do that? Or do we pretend we're fine all the time?
Is it the same as role modeling?
Role modeling, yeah, exactly. Modeling or role modeling. So what does that look like? That could mean like admitting when you feel stressed, admitting when you've made a mistake, having an honest check-in about what's going on in your life. That's not just professionalism and performance and productivity and everything's great. If you want someone to open up to you, this goes for any relationship in your life, you have to go first. If you show vulnerability, they show it back. If you never show vulnerability, you never admit any weakness or any emotion other than I'm fine, people won't show it back to you.
True.
Number 4, running emotional intelligence training. So this is something that I offer that I think can really counteract the emotional suppression, the bottling up of emotions that many of us have experienced basically since childhood. Helping people in your team to know how to deal with stress, with anxiety, with anger, which can lead to conflict and take up a lot of time if you don't know how to deal with anger in your company, with self-criticism, feeling like you're not good enough, learning how to develop more self-compassion, emotional regulation, ability to sleep better if you're getting stressed and anxious, ability to deal with conflict more effectively rather than having ongoing fights with people in your company. And 5thly, offering coaching, and I think specifically male coaches. Not every man wants to work with a man. Some men feel much more comfortable opening up with a woman. They feel safer, they feel the woman's going to listen better, whatever it is. But 80% of coaches are female. And some men would much rather open up, they'd feel safer opening up to a man. So if you are going to offer coaching in your company, I think it's important that you have a provider that can offer male coaches as well as female.
That is a very powerful point that you've made there, as actually, because there is something to be said for people with similar lived experiences. When it comes to, to coaching, you want somebody who's probably walked that path before, there's some things you don't have to explain to them because they get it. So I think that really, that is a very good point.
Absolutely. We want someone we can relate to. And I think also coaching can work for men because they might start thinking this is about my performance. This is about me getting a promotion or a pay increase or becoming a better leader. But it can then open up into a space of like, actually, here are some things that I'm struggling with emotionally or mentally. Sometimes men feel that's easier to access than, right, I'm going to go for therapy and counseling and we're going to go straight into talking about big emotional things. So some books I recommend if you want to learn more about men's mental health. Of Boys and Men is quite an academic study of lots of ways that men are falling behind in education, in the prison system, when it comes to access to their own children after a separation, even economically. There's a lot about intersectionality there and how particularly Black men in America are falling behind, a long way behind. Really No Mates is a book about he's actually a stand-up comedian who realized I don't have a best man because I don't have a best friend. And it's a book about male friendship, which is very funny, but it's also got lots of really interesting insights about what gets in the way of having close relationships as a man. And What About Men is a book by a feminist, and I love it because often there's a lot of antagonism between people who advocate for men and men's mental health and feminists, but she really does an amazing job of understanding what it's like to be a man. And she has a chapter on bodies, on clothing, on communication, on relationships, and how pressures around masculinity affect all of these areas. She shows a lot of insight and understanding and compassion, and I found it very validating to have a woman show so much curiosity and understanding about what it's like to be a man and what some of the challenges are. And I've just got one other thing which I'd like to share before we go into the Q&A, which is that I've created a really simple introduction to emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. A tool belt, I call it. 7 tools to calm an anxious mind. They are 2 to 3 minute videos. Each one is a mindfulness-based exercise to help you feel immediately calmer and less stressed and more relaxed and present. And I'll put the link to that in the chat.
Yes, if you share the link with me via email as well, so that following today, we can share them again, just as a reminder for people who would like to access them. So thank you very much, Andy. That's very detailed and very much appreciated. I just have 2 more questions for you. If you take your slides back to the book, to the 3 books that you recommended, what's actually prompted the first question is the second book, Billy No Mates, and I've written something down around community building. So my question is around how men build, or should I say don't build, community. Generally, again, I'm speaking generally. I know this would not apply to every single man on earth, but if you consider how women are more likely to build community and how men are less likely to build community, because I don't think there are a lot of women that would be getting married and not have one person that can be a chief bridesmaid, for example. It might happen, but it's not very common. But then we have men that, is that because men are not creating community for themselves? They're not being vulnerable, even amongst with other men as well. I think, what can we do to change that? Is what I don't want to diagnose the problems too much, because the reality is the reality, and you've gone through those stats, we know what they are. But I find that men are less likely to build community. So take, for example, apart from the wedding issue, a woman has a baby, for example, they're more likely to reach out to other, if not even when they have a baby, from the pregnancy stage, they're more likely to have some sort of community around that, likely to reach out to people, likely to join groups. I'm not saying that men don't do this, but I've been to a lot of these these parents and baby groups. I don't see a lot of men there. So what is it that can be done to ensure that men are able to build community? Because I know how helpful I've found that in terms of people having similar experiences, how we can support one another. But how do you see this happening? What do you think needs to change?
Well, your personal experience is borne out by statistics, which show that men tend to open up less than women to their friends, and also that male friendship is on the decline, that the number of men with 6 or more friends has gone down by something like 25% since the 90s.
I'm sure it's more.
Maybe it's more, but that's the one I saw.
Yeah.
So what can we do about it? Well, I think it is helpful to name one of the things that gets in the way, which is what you said, vulnerability. That if you think that asking for help, showing weakness, showing that you're emotional, you're struggling in some way, will result in you being shamed, you're just not going to open up to people. If you don't open up to people, how can you have close friendships? How can you have close relationships with anyone? What do we need to do as men? We need spaces where we can feel it's safe to open up, where we can learn that it is okay. And it isn't safe with everyone. Not everyone you open up to will be okay with it, will not take the piss or change the subject or try and fix you. So for me, I can speak from my personal experience. What's helped me is therapy, finding a therapist or a coach that I can really trust. And I had to go through a few before I found one that I did. I mentioned at the start about men's groups. They are super powerful. Number one, they're often free. If not, they're very cheap or done on donations. It's a lot more accessible financially than therapy. You've got the aspect of normalization. So when you hear another man say, I'm really struggling with my girlfriend, or I'm so stressed at work, you're like, oh, he said that, no one took the piss. Maybe I can say what I'm struggling with. So you see, because other men are doing it, and that it's safe for you to do it. So I think those are really powerful spaces which are growing. There's online ones, for example, one called Men Speak. You can send a follow-up email with some links to some of these groups.
Yes, please.
There's another one called Andy's Man Club, which is not my man club.
I was going to say.
They took my name. That is nationwide, in person, and it's free. I've been along to it, and I thought it was fantastic. So and also just taking a bit of a risk with your existing friends, because the chances are they will also somewhere inside wish that they could be a bit more honest. Often they'll wish they could show a bit more of what they're struggling with, what's difficult, because everyone's got stresses.
Yes.
Whether it's stress or whether it's family or work or whatever it is, we're all carrying something that is difficult in our lives. Life is inherently full of suffering. So we all have a desire to not have to bottle it up and pretend we're fine when we're not. And actually, I got some great wisdom from my partner, who, she's not a coach or a therapist, but she just has this very simple thing that she does with vulnerability, which is she shows a little bit. She waits to see what happens. Do they share something back? And if they do, she shares a bit more. If they don't, she doesn't. She just puts a little toe in the water rather than be like, right, this is why my life is falling apart and I'm a mess and just pouring it out. You just share a little thing and say, and see, is this person a safe person to open up to?
What you've just said, the example you've just given now about your partner just kind of reminded me about a learning model. There are different models and psychological tool and all of that. But it just reminded me about the Johari window model. Are you familiar with that?
The what model, sorry?
Johari window.
Johari window. No, I don't know that.
Okay, so I'll do a very quick one. So if you think about 4 boxes, in one box here is open area, a blind spot, hidden area, and the unknown. So when you meet somebody for the first time, or you're just getting to meet them, there are some things that are open about them. Like, you can see me, I'm a Black woman, I'm a certain eyes, blah, blah, blah. That's, you know what I do. That's what I will put in the open window. That's open, is known to self. So I know that, you know that, we all do. There is the hidden area where it's just me that knows about this. So this is just not known to others, but it's known to me. So that might be a few personal things happening for me at home and all of that. And then there is another box here, which is the blind spot, where I have no clue that maybe I'm doing these things. It's kind of a blind spot to me. And then there is the unknown. When we meet people, this is the box that we all come with. This is what the psychologist is saying. And in terms of how we relate to people, sometimes if we drop the box a little bit, and I think that's what your partner's kind of done, which is drop the box from what's open and make it even wider. So you share something a little bit more about yourself, where the window of what's hidden is a bit more smaller. Because so in terms of how I use this model to talk to teams about how to build vulnerability and how to get to, especially for new team members where they don't really know each other. So you share something a little bit about, this is who I am, this is what I do, or my holiday is coming up in 2 weeks' time, something like that. So that window gets a bit smaller. So now they know I'm going to Grace. So now they know this about me. But when we met initially, they didn't know anything about that. So depending on how they receive that information, or maybe they give me something back, I might decide, okay, I'll drop it even further. But for some people, the area of what's open to others is so small that we just know their names and that they work here. We literally don't know anything else. So in terms of how we interrelate with them, how we can be vulnerable, or how we can get to know them a bit better, is very, very difficult to do. I'd love my model, so I will share this as well after the call. If anybody is interested in a bit of psychology and a bit of learning and development. So thanks very much for sharing that, Andy. I think we've had another comment here from Malcolm. Thanks, Malcolm. And he said, yes, community. I think this was in response to what we said earlier about how men can build community. Yes, community and discuss challenges with each other. People who do discuss their issues and have a support group tend to live longer. I'm not surprised about that. Thanks very much, Malcolm. Because if for anything, sometimes being in a community and having a support group sometimes might stop you from taking certain decisions that you should really be taking. And maybe opportunity to talk things over. Yes, that's very useful. Thank you. I'm just going to go on to my last question for you. I've written it down. Let me see. What's the one thing that you wish leaders, understood about men's mental health, Andy? Is there anything that you wish, people would remember, especially people in leadership, in management position, in the workplace context? What's the one thing that you wish that, leaders knew or understood about men's mental health?
I would say that there's often a lot more going on underneath the surface than meets the eye. That just because someone seems fine and they say they're fine, it doesn't mean that they are fine. Which is tricky, right? Because then how do you deal with it if they're not admitting they're not okay? But I think it comes back to the vulnerability piece, that if you're a leader that helps the people around them to feel that it's safe to be honest, that gives the best, you won't guarantee it, but that gives the best chance that people will say if they're having difficulty. But the default for most men, or a lot of men, is to say they're fine even though they're not. And at the most extreme end of that, you hear people who take their lives and no one knew there was a problem. Right? We hear about these stories all the time. He seemed that he was the life and soul of the party. He had kids, he had a great job, he had a house, everything looked great from the outside. No note, and then he's gone. He's taken his life. No one even knew he was struggling.
There is a lot more than what you can see. So I guess that then leaves us with a responsibility to try and get to know people more, kind of dive a bit further into the, not just take everything at surface level, people's interaction, their responses to certain things, how they respond to emails, how they respond to, communication, just kind of look beyond. Sometimes we have to look beyond what they're telling us to what they're not telling us, what's kind of reading between the lines, I think. So that's really good. Thanks very much. If anyone has any question, please feel free to put them in the chat. If you have any questions for Andy, please put them in the chat, and we're coming to the end of our session, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind answering one or two questions that come through. So thanks very much once again for all the people who have joined us today, and for those who are watching on replay. Our conversation today is with Andy Hix, and our topics are men's mental health at work, spotting the signs and simple tools for managers. So thanks very much, Andy, for your time. I appreciate you being.
I'm curious to know, Tutu, as we're wrapping up, if there's any particular takeaway that you've got from our conversation today.
Oh yes, definitely, lots of takeaways, but I think I would say two actually. First one is what we just discussed now around trying to look beyond the surface. And actually this is something that still happened this week that I think I can use actually without saying too much, is around sometimes people might come off as a bit aggressive at work in terms of their response. So I kind of was dealing with a situation where a team, I feel like I have to
I don't know if that's the case.
Can you hear me though?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so I was dealing with a situation at work this week where I felt like so another member of a particular team had responded to a colleague. What she'd asked is just something that I would consider to be, it's not a big request, so to say, but the aggression that came back in terms of the response to that, it was it was a bit much for me, I think, when I saw it, and I thought, oh gosh. So I had to ask the question, what else happened? Is this all? It just seems like what you're asking them to do, and then what their response is, it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem aligned at all. But listening to you now, I'm kind of thinking I need to look further into that and see what else is going on, with that person. Yeah. And also, second thing for me, from an HR perspective, is not to always reach for the policy and the procedure straight away. So someone said something, they reacted in a certain way, they behaved in a certain way. We should not be too quick to reach out for the disciplinary procedure, for example, and have a formal process. Maybe think a little bit more around, what you've just shared around, our interaction with them. What's going on, try and find out a bit more before then deciding how best to produce, because I like to bring it back to what can we do in the workplace with this information. So I would say those are my takeaways. And those statistics that you shared, gosh, I still struggle with them a little bit, but I guess it is what it is at the end of the day. That's the reality that we're currently facing. So yes, that's what I would say my takeaways are.
Great, I love that. And it sounds like both of them are examples of going from judgment to curiosity. Actually want to find out more what's going on for people.
Yes.
Than like you've done something wrong or you need to follow the procedure. And yeah, and that's what I really hope people do take away from the session is more curiosity and care and understanding for men and what they might be going through, but you might not see.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. Thanks to all those who have joined us and those watching on replay. How can we find you, Andy? I know how to find you, but for those who are watching, I want to reach out to you, maybe to book a session. How can we find you?
Very simple, andyhix.com. And we'll also send a follow-up email with some links to resources, to the 7 tools to calm an anxious mind. So you can book a 30-minute consultation if you'd like to discuss anything we've talked about today. I'm offering a 20% discount for Movember for men who want to get some support around stress, anxiety, something that's bothering them. And the 30-minute call is just to discuss, is this something that would help you? No obligation. And also, if you want some more support for men in your workplace, I'd love to have a conversation, whether that's emotional intelligence training, doing an audit to see, is this a psychologically safe workplace? Do men feel like they can be themselves and open up? Or even creating a men's group within your company, a particular support group for men where they can feel safe to open up and talk about things that affect them, because we've had women's support groups in companies for a long time, LGBT groups, but very few companies have a group for men. And some people are quite anti the idea that there should be some kind of group to specifically support men. But I think it's really important. And I think the statistics bear that out.
Okay, thanks very much, Andy. And I would agree with that as well. Following our discussion, we will share via email and on all our social media channels your resources and also further contact details of how people can reach out to you. So not just for individuals, but also organizations as well that would like to reach out. I would like to support their team members. Andy, words would not be enough to thank you for your time today. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today about this very important topic. And I just want to say a big, big thank you to you and to say that, your support with this is very much appreciated. I also would like to thank everyone that has joined us in the comment section, that has been commenting and following us and engaging. I just want to say thank you very much. And we appreciate your time as well. And I hope that you all have a lovely day ahead of you. Oh, Malcolm has just said something. Let me see. So we've had another comment. I just want to make sure that if it's a question that we haven't missed it. Oh, okay. It's a thank you message. So thank you both. I'm very stressed and I let those you're talking know, and apologies in advance if I was a bit short and apologize in advance. Oh, that's very self-reflective. Thank you very much, Malcolm. I appreciate that. Sometimes you're very stressed and that's how you come off. And it's not because of those individuals is just because there's a lot going on inside. So yes, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Thanks very much, Jonathan, as well, for joining us. Yeah, thanks everyone. This will be available on replay in case you want to go back and listen to this. And yes, I look forward to seeing you on our next. I feel like and we need to invite Andy back. I feel like we could talk a little even longer, but we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So, do you have any closing remarks before we finish?
Just thank you everyone for joining and engaging with this topic, because as we were saying at the start, it is overlooked. I really don't think it does get enough attention. And Tutu, I do also particularly appreciate you as a woman saying, yes, let's focus on men's mental health too.
Thank you.
I really feel touched when women show that care. I know it's there, but when women express it directly, it touches me, and it also makes me think, like, as men, we need to be more proactive in supporting women's issues, because when there's a women's event, not usually very many men.
We could talk about that, Andy. we can. That is a whole big topic right there that we can talk about. But yes, I appreciate your acknowledgement, and I would like to say thank you. And just one thing I would like to add is that when it comes to talking about well-being, inclusion, health, it's not us against them. So the fact more when we're focusing or highlighting men's health, men's mental well-being, it doesn't mean that we're against women's health or women's well-being. So it's not always a gender war, and it's not about, because we're focusing on this, why should we focus on that, and all of that. There is enough time and resources to dedicate to the different areas and identity of who we are. So yes, you can always count on my support, on our support, and if there's anything that you need us to do, please, you know where we are. You only need to call and we will be there.
Thank you, Tutu. I really appreciate that.
Okay, well, thanks everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
Bye everyone.